Hello. Hello and welcome to another episode, or the second episode of One Take Editorial, where I address topics that don't really fit neatly into a properly produced full-on anime editorial video. So today we're going to be talking about a bit of an interesting topic, something that actually was discussed between me and a few friends over the Christmas break, and it's been on my mind a bit recently, and I've actually wanted to address it properly, and I guess here's the right place to do it. One of my friends over the break, his name's Elijah. You guys have most likely heard his voice in some of the live streams I've done. He proposed something. He had a gripe with modern anime, and he said something on the lines of, the filter is gone. And when he first said that, it was pretty strange to me because I didn't really understand what he meant by the filter. And when he actually explained it, it kind of did make a lot of sense, and I really did understand where he was coming from. So really the idea of the filter, the long and short of it, is the lengths that anime licensing companies would go to back in the late 80s and early 90s to make sure they had shows that they knew would gel with the Western market. This basically, as he surmises, filtered out shows that were more otaku based and were more out there in terms of scope and ideas. So they kind of boiled them down to shows that they had a good understanding would fit into the taste of people from the other side of the pond. That's what really brought some of the 90s classics or even 80s classics, such as movies like Akira, the first Ghost in the Shell film, TV shows like Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, Outlaw Star, other TV shows even that actually kind of did have a bit more of the Japanese flair to it, but would resonate with younger audiences, like Dragon Ball Z, and in some cases even G Gundam and Gundam Wing. So the idea is that back in the 80s and 90s, we basically weren't getting all of the anime. We were only getting the anime that the licensing companies knew were going to gel with the Western market. And this kind of goes back to the idea of when the first two anime booms happened. The first boom being, anime historians usually kind of are a bit wonky on when exactly the dates are, but the first boom is usually classified as being really long, ever since the first animated projects started showing up in America, like Speed Racer, and maybe even like the original dub of Astro Boy. And the second boom is much more neatly spaced between the 80s and 90s, which is when most older fans, guys who are probably in their 30s now, got into anime, and most fans such as me in their early 20s actually began watching anime back in the 90s with shows like Sailor Moon, with shows like Digimon and Pokemon, shows again which would fit neatly into this idea of the filter or filtered out products. So like with many things that had to do with media in the late 90s and early 2000s, the internet basically killed the idea of the filter, and it didn't happen very quickly. It kind of took it almost about, say, from the years of 2003 up until 2008-ish for it to completely kind of crumble down and for the floodgates to open in terms of the shows that we were able to get. Because the idea that fans could get their hands on anime that was coming out in Japan and release them for wide varieties of people to see in the original Japanese, subbed into English, was kind of one of the main things that brought down this idea of the filter. So what Elijah's contention was when he brought this idea to me was that anime nowadays, it's kind of been a negative thing for us to lose that filter, because now we're getting so many different shows. We're being inundated with anime that a lot of people don't even watch, that a lot of people wouldn't even classify as very good, and that you wouldn't even, so he basically was angry that, well, not angry, but he was basically unhappy with how many pandering shows, how many the types of shows that if you brought them to someone who knew what anime was but wasn't a fan of anime, they'd be pretty much turned off by it. And he has a point. That most arguments usually have both good points on both sides, but I really don't necessarily think it's a good thing that the filter is. It would be a good thing for the filter to come back, I guess, because it really can't. The floodgates are open. Ever since the first fan subs hit the internet, you really can't close the lid on that Pandora's box. It's out. Everyone can get whatever anime they want to watch, and that's fine. Because one thing he really didn't take into consideration was that the amount of anime that are coming out now, in general, based on how much was coming out back in the 80s and 90s, has increased exponentially. There are studios operating now that would have never been able to operate back in the 80s and 90s, because with the advent of digital animation and with the advent of a bunch of newer corner-cutting techniques when it comes to production. So the idea that, there's too many shows coming out, that we're getting too much anime that no one's even caring about or watching, that aren't even very good. I mean, again, that's one of those things that's a bit subjective when it comes to that sort of thing, because, again, your opinions on what anime are good aren't going to be the same as the opinions of someone else. But the part that interested me was how anime culture has really, this idea of the filter has really completely changed anime culture, because fans who came up in the 80s and 90s, while they do have a vested interest in Japanese culture and a vested interest in Japanese animation, you'll talk to older fans nowadays and they'll scoff at most of the shows that come out now. They'll scoff at most of the shows that get traction, and I wouldn't say with good reason, but I can understand their gripes. It's just not the same shows anymore. But at the same time, I wouldn't say that the kinds of shows that appeal to them don't still come out. They're just not front and center the same way they used to be. And actually, I kind of did a thought experiment. I thought to myself, well, if the internet never came along and every anime that was ever made still happened, what shows would we get that would actually pass through the filter? What shows would companies like ADV, Funimation, etc., what shows would they still license and give to us? And the amount of shows, there were quite a few that came to mind. I would say we would have probably still gotten Code Geass. We would have probably still gotten maybe Gurren Lagann. We would have probably definitely still gotten Black Lagoon. That would have probably been a big one. We would have still gotten quite a number of shows. But at the same time, I can't say that the filter being gone is a bad thing. I can't bring myself to say that whatsoever, because there's so many good shows that we would have never seen otherwise. If not for the internet, if not for internet culture, and if not for the accessibility of modern anime, we would have never have gotten shows like Nichijou. We would have never gotten the Monogatari series. I would have never gotten to see Joshiraku, and just so many other shows would have just never been available to the mass market when it comes to anime. So I would say that the filter itself, good riddance, mainly. It's a good thing that it's gone. However, I do still understand why some people want it back, and I still understand why someone like Elijah, and I'm going to use a friend of mine, this friend I'm talking about, as a template, because he really does fit into the mold of the typical second boomer. Second boomer meaning fan that came up in the 90s that was very much invested in older shows, very much invested in mecha, very much invested in just more down to earth, realistic action types of shows. And I would say that there are still shows for those people. except those shows aren't front and center anymore. The shows that are front and center now are light novel adaptations, more or less. Stuff like Sword Art Online, stuff like maybe Sword Art Online is the only one that comes to mind right now, but bigger shows, even stuff like manga adaptations like Attack on Titan, or even Agame ga Kill, and such like that. So when it comes to that kind of thing, it's a bit difficult to kind of pin down which side is, right, because you've still got loads of nonsense shows that still come out. But again, you can mostly attribute that to the fact that more shows in general are coming out. With the magnitude of shows coming out, you're gonna have a magnitude of garbage that comes with them, and it's kind of your job as an anime fan to filter out yourself and find your own new favorites, which is kind of like, we should all have our own personal filter. We should be able to step in, find a bunch of different shows we like and enjoy those, instead of expecting every show that gets released to kind of pander to us. So I would say that what could necessarily be done to appease both older and younger fans alike in this particular sense, I don't know, this is gonna sound really like a really dickish thing to say, but just find the shows you like and don't complain about the shows other people like. It's really a simple thing. So when it comes to this notion of the filter in anime, I'd say it's good that it's gone. It was necessary for the medium across the border to grow. And again, if we were still living in the 90s mindset of we're only going to get shows that Funimation wants to license to us, we would never ever get shows that are revered as classics nowadays. And I would say a magnitude of Kyoto Animation shows would never see the light of day back in the 90s. That's kind of cutting out a lot of great anime. So a lot of Shaft shows would never see the light of day in the 90s. Do you think Sayonara Zetsubo Sensei would have been passed by Funimation? Do you think that could air on Toonami? No. That would have never gotten by. And if you think about it, the filter is still alive, kind of, because when you watch Toonami, those are the shows that they are very much aware are going to gel with the, I won't say casual, because that kind of has a negative connotation, but the type of anime fan that isn't on that doesn't have a Crunchyroll subscription, that isn't browsing A or Reddit or on Twitter talking about their favorite shows, that just, wants to sit down and watch some anime, but, every Saturday night. That's why you've got shows like Cash and Sins, shows like, again, Agame ga Kill, which actually is on Toonami, shows like Michiko to Hatchin, Samurai Champloo, etc., which are all on Toonami nowadays. That is basically where the filter still lives. And I guess if anime was to make another resurgence on television, there would kind of still be that level of a filter. But amongst anime fans like us, I'd say it's good that it's gone, because we are fine with the Japanese weirdness that comes with anime. That's what we sign up for. That's what we're fine with seeing. So I'm pretty certain that this idea of the filter, and I know this isn't something, I don't want this to turn into a thing, but for the purposes of this video and this discussion, I guess it would be alright to call it the filter. It really is a good thing that it's no longer with us, and I'd say it was necessary for the medium to become what it is today, at least across the border with us as Western anime fans enjoying a Japanese medium. So basically, that was pretty much the discussion. Also, a quick note, I'm going to throw this in here because I can't really find another place. A lot of people have been asking me where all the live streams have gone. They are in a playlist that you can find if you go to the About section on the Anime Editorial YouTube channel. It is in the live stream playlist, so they're all unlisted so they don't clutter up the channel, but you can still enjoy them. They're still available to see. So tell me what you guys think, though. Tell me what shows you think would have passed through the filter or tell me if it should if I'm completely wrong and it should still be a thing, or tell me if I'm even more wrong and it was never a thing and there were always weird shows being released in America or in the UK or in the West in general. Just, give me some feedback. As always, sayonara minasan, and thanks for watching.